He had ordered a small black coffee at the counter of his own café, and the young woman taking his order had no idea who he was. She didn't recognize the face under the gray hood. She didn't know that the name on the lease, on the payroll, on every cup she'd handed out that morning, belonged to the quiet man now waiting by the window. And she certainly didn't know that in about 90 seconds she was going to beg her manager, in a back hallway she thought was empty, not to take away the only thing keeping her family afloat. What he did next is the reason I'm telling you this story. Stay with me to the end. Because the part that broke me wasn't the rescue. It was the sentence he said to her afterward, in the parking lot, when he thought no one else could hear. The café sat on a corner that most people walked past without noticing. Brick front, a hand-painted sign, Maple and Mercer, and a window that fogged up first thing in the morning when the espresso machines came alive. It wasn't famous. It wasn't trendy. It was the kind of place where the regulars had their orders memorized by the staff, and where the staff had their regulars memorized right back. Maya Ellison opened that café 4 mornings a week. She was 23 years old, and she'd been working there for 14 months. She knew that Mr. Petrakis liked his cortado with exactly 1 sugar. She knew the woman with the stroller always came in at 8:15, and always forgot her loyalty card. She knew which table wobbled and which chair squeaked, and she knew how to make a stranger feel, for the 4 minutes they stood at her counter, like the most welcome person in the world. What the customers didn't know was what Maya carried in with her every morning before the doors even opened. Her mother had been sick for most of the past year. Not the kind of sick that gets better in a week. The kind that turns a household upside down, that fills the kitchen counter with orange pill bottles and the mailbox with envelopes stamped past due in red. Her father worked nights. Her younger brother was 16 and trying, God bless him, to act like none of it scared him. And Maya was the one who'd quietly decided that her paycheck from Maple and Mercer was not going to be the thing that fell through. It paid the electric bill. It paid for her brother's bus pass. Some weeks, after rent, it was the difference between groceries and an empty refrigerator. So she showed up. Every shift. Early, smiling. That Tuesday started like any other. The rain had stopped just before dawn, leaving the streets dark and shining. Maya unlocked the door at 6:45, flipped on the lights, started the machines, and let the warm smell of coffee fill the room like it always did. By 7:30, the regulars were trickling in. By 8:00, there was a small line. And somewhere in that line, unremarkable and unnoticed, was a man in a gray hooded jacket and worn jeans, holding a paperback book, waiting his turn like anyone else. His name was Eli Marsh. Now, if you'd shown his face to 100 people on the street, 90 of them would have gasped. Eli Marsh had carried 3 of the biggest films of the last decade. He'd stood on stages in a tuxedo holding gold statues. His face had been on billboards 4 stories tall, but Eli had a habit that drove his agent crazy and made everyone who actually knew him love him. He liked to disappear. He liked ordinary mornings. He liked sitting in a corner with a book and a coffee and being absolutely no one. And there was one more thing almost nobody knew. 2 years earlier, when Maple and Mercer had been weeks away from closing, when the original owner, an old friend of his, had run out of money and out of hope, Eli had quietly written a check and become a silent partner. No press release. No name on the sign. He just didn't want the place to die. He stopped in maybe once a month, unannounced, to sit in the corner and watch the little calf he'd saved keep breathing. The staff had no idea. To them, he was just the quiet guy who tipped well and never made a fuss. That morning, Maya took his order without a second glance. "What can I get you?" Small coffee, black, please, soft voice, easy smile, coming right up. Room for cream? Just black is perfect. Thank you. She rang him up, handed him his cup, and called the next customer forward. 4 minutes. Nothing remarkable. He carried his coffee to the corner table by the window, opened his book, and became invisible again. He had no idea that the next 10 minutes were going to change everything. The morning rush thinned out around 9:15. The line dissolved into a few stragglers, then into the comfortable quiet of a café between waves. That was when Dolan arrived. Dolan was the store manager. He'd been brought on about 6 months earlier when the regional office decided Maple and Mercer needed someone to tighten things up. And tighten things up he did. He cut the morning prep time. He cut a part-time position. He installed a camera over the register and made a point of letting everyone know he was watching it. The staff had a word for the feeling that walked in with Dolan every morning, though none of them ever said it out loud. It was the feeling of being a number on a spreadsheet instead of a person behind a counter. Maya had tried, the way she tried with everyone, to win him over. Extra smiles, volunteering for the shifts no one wanted. But Dolan didn't deal in warmth. He dealt in numbers, and lately his numbers were not making him happy. That Tuesday, Dolan came in holding a printout. He didn't say good morning. He walked straight behind the counter, set the paper down by the register, and said, low and flat, "Maya, back office." Now, she felt it in her stomach before she understood it in her head, that particular drop. She glanced at the half-dozen customers still in the café, including the quiet man in the corner, who did not look up from his book, and she followed Dolan down the short hallway toward the office. The hallway was narrow. On one side, the office. On the other, a swinging door to the seating area that didn't quite close all the way. It never had. Everyone who worked there knew that if you stood in that hallway, sound carried out into the room behind you. Everyone who worked there knew it. Dolan didn't work there long enough to care. Inside the office, he held up the printout like it was evidence. Your drawer was $11 short on Friday. Maya blinked. 11. Dolan, I closed Friday with 2 other people. We were slammed. $11 over a whole day, that's a discrepancy. And it's not the first. He set the paper down. You were 4 minutes late on Monday. You comped a drink last week without authorization. The machine made it wrong. I remade it. That's the policy. It was the policy. He let the past tense sit there. Look, I've got numbers to hit. The region's breathing down my neck. And I can't carry people who cost me money. Cost you, her voice caught. I've worked here over a year. I open 4 days a week. I've never missed I'm letting you go, Maya. End of the week. I wanted to do it face to face. That's a courtesy. And just like that, the floor opened up under her. Here's the thing about a moment like that. When it lands on you, your whole life rearranges itself in about 3 seconds. Maya didn't think about the $11. She didn't think about the 4 minutes. In the space of one breath, she thought about the electric bill, and her brother's bus pass, and the orange pill bottles on the kitchen counter, and the look on her mother's face when she'd promised her that everything was handled. And she did the thing that costs the most pride a person has. She begged. Dolan, please don't do this. I'm asking you. Whatever I did wrong, tell me and I'll fix it. I'll come in earlier. I'll stay later. I'll cover every shift nobody wants. I already do, Maya. My mom is sick. The words came out before she could stop them, raw, too fast. She's really sick. And my dad's working nights. And this job, this is what keeps the lights on. Literally the lights. I'm not telling you this for sympathy. I'm telling you because it's true. I cannot lose this job. I will do anything. Please don't take this from me. There was a silence in that little office. And in the silence, Dolan looked at her and looked back down at his printout. "It's a business decision," he said. "It's not personal. It's not personal." 4 words that have ended more good people's months than almost anything else in the world. Now, remember that hallway. Remember the door that never quite closed. Remember the quiet man in the gray hood, sitting at the corner table by the window with a book he had stopped reading about 30 seconds earlier. Eli Marsh had heard every word. He hadn't meant to. He'd just been sitting there, the way he liked to, being no one. But the swinging door carried Maya's voice out into the half-empty room, and the second he heard the word "please" crack the way it had, that specific kind of cracking, the kind that only comes from someone who has run out of other options, he had set his book down on the table, very gently, and gone completely still. He listened to a 23-year-old apologize for $11. He listened to her offer to come in earlier, stay later, take the shifts no one wanted. He listened to her say the words "my mom is sick" in a voice that was trying so hard to stay level and failing. And he listened to a man tell her it wasn't personal. The other customers hadn't noticed. They were on their phones, in their own mornings. Only Eli had been close enough and still enough and paying enough attention to hear it. He sat there for a moment. And then he stood up. He didn't slam anything. He didn't storm anywhere. People who knew Eli Marsh always said the same thing about him, that the angrier he got, the quieter he became. He picked up his coffee. He walked, calm as anything, toward the hallway. Maya came out of the office first, fast, her eyes down, heading straight for the little staff room to find 30 seconds of privacy to fall apart in. She nearly walked right into him. "Sorry," she said automatically, wiping her face with the back of her hand. "Sorry. Do you need something?" Eli looked at her. Gently. "You okay?" And it was such a simple question, asked so plainly, that Maya, who had spent 14 months making everyone else feel welcome, who had just begged a man for her job and lost, felt her throat close up. "I'm fine," she said. The oldest lie in the world. "Long morning. What can I get you?" "You already got me a coffee," he said, with a small smile. It was a good one. Behind her, Dolan emerged from the office, sliding back into manager mode the instant he saw a customer. "Everything all right out here?" "Sir, can we help you with something?" Eli turned to him, still calm, still quiet. "You're the manager?" "I am." "Dolan, is there a problem?" "I think there might be," Eli said. "I was sitting right over there." He nodded toward the corner table. "That door doesn't close all the way. I heard your conversation. All of it." Dolan's jaw tightened. "Sir, that's an internal staffing matter I really can't discuss. You don't have to discuss it." "I heard it." Eli's voice didn't rise. If anything, it got softer. "I heard you fire a young woman over $11 in 4 minutes. I heard her tell you her mother is sick. And I heard you tell her it wasn't personal." Dolan's face went red. "I don't know who you think you are." Eli reached into his back pocket, pulled out his wallet, and took out a small card. He didn't make a show of it. He just held it out so Dolan could read the name printed on it. Dolan read it. Read it again. The color drained out of his face the same way it had drained out of Maya's 20 minutes earlier. Because the name on the card was the name on the ownership documents of Maple and Mercer, the silent partner, the one the regional office answered to, the one whose money had saved this calf 2 years ago when it was weeks from closing. "I'm Eli Marsh," he said. "I own a piece of this place, not the part you see, the part that decides whether places like this stay open. I come in once a month or so, sit in the corner, drink a coffee, and watch how the people I'm responsible for get treated. He glanced at Maya, who was standing frozen, not entirely sure this was real. And today, Eli said, turning back to Dolan, I watched. To his credit, or maybe just out of pure shock, Dolan didn't argue. Mr. Marsh, I didn't know. I had no idea you were. That's exactly the point, Eli said, and for the first time there was the faintest edge under the calm. You didn't know who I was. So you had no reason to perform for me. What I heard in that hallway is just how you do it, how you treat people when you think the only person watching is someone who can't fight back. The numbers, Dolan started. I've seen the numbers. Eli nodded toward the caf behind them, the regulars, the warmth, the fogged-up window. You know what I haven't seen on a single spreadsheet? Mr. Petrakis's cortado with 1 sugar. The woman who forgets her loyalty card, the reason people walk past 2 other coffee shops to come to this one. He paused. That's her. That's the part that doesn't show up in your numbers, Dolan. That's the part you were about to fire. The caf had gone quiet now. A couple of the regulars had finally clued in that something was happening and were watching over the tops of their cups. Eli turned to Maya. Maya, is that right? Maya? She nodded. She couldn't quite speak. Maya, you're not fired. He said it plainly, like a fact, not a favor. You were never fired. I want to be really clear about that, because you're going to replay this morning in your head for a while, and I don't want you replaying the version where you lost. You didn't lose. You did everything right. You showed up. You took care of people. And when someone tried to take your livelihood over $11, you fought for it with the only thing you had, which was the truth. That's not weakness. That took more guts than anything I've done on a movie set. Maya's eyes filled up. I thank you. I don't thank you. Don't thank me yet, he said. I'm not done. What Eli did over the next few days, he did quietly, the way he did everything. Dolan was not fired on the spot. Eli, it turned out, didn't believe in doing to people the exact thing he'd just condemned. But Dolan was moved out of the store and into a role with no staff to manage, and given a very direct conversation with the regional office about how the people behind the counter were not, in fact, line items. Maya was offered the shift lead position, more hours, more pay, and the authority to make the call on a remade drink without anyone breathing down her neck about it. But that's not the part that stayed with me. The part that stayed with me happened in the parking lot, later that same morning, when Eli was leaving. Maya caught up to him by his car. She still had 100 things she wanted to say and no idea how to say any of them. Mr. Marsh, why? She finally managed. You don't know me. You could have just finished your coffee and left. Why would you do all this for someone you've never met? Eli leaned against the car for a second. And here's the sentence. Here's the one I told you about at the very beginning. Because a long time ago, he said, I was the one in the back hallway. And nobody was sitting in the corner. He let that land. Before any of the movies. Before any of it. I had a stretch where I was exactly where you are, one bad week away from everything falling apart, getting told it wasn't personal by people who held my whole life in their hands and didn't even look up. I promised myself that if I ever ended up on the other side of that, I'd be the person I needed back then. He smiled, just a little. Turns out, you don't get to be that person at a podium. You get to be it on a regular Tuesday, in a hallway, when nobody's filming. He got in his car. He rolled the window down before he pulled away. Maya, the lights stay on. Okay? Go take care of your mom. And then he was gone, back to being no one, the way he liked it. I think about this story more than I expected to. Not because a famous man saved someone's job. Stories like that are nice, but they're not really the point. The point is what he said about the corner of the room. Because here's the truth none of us like to sit with. Most of the cruelty in the world doesn't happen at podiums. It doesn't happen where it'll get filmed. It happens in back hallways, in tone of voice, in 4 flat words. It's not personal, said to someone who has run all the way out of options. And most of the kindness that actually matters doesn't happen at podiums either. It happens when someone is quiet enough, and still enough, and paying enough attention to hear the person in the hallway, and decides not to look back down at their book. You don't have to own a calf to be the person in the corner. You just have to be paying attention. To the cashier whose smile doesn't quite reach her eyes. To the coworker who's gone quiet. To the person, somewhere near you today, who is one bad week away and praying nobody notices. Notice them. If this story moved you even a little, do me a favor. Leave a comment with one word. Tuesday. Just so I know you made it to the end. And so I know there are people out there still willing to sit in the corner for someone else. And if you believe the world needs a few more Eli Marshes in it, quiet ones, the kind who help when no one's watching, then hit subscribe, because that's the only kind of story we tell on this channel. Thank you for being here. I'll see you in the next one.